The courtroom was full, yet not a single person dared to move. It was one of those rare moments when time seemed to freeze, like the final scene of a movie, right before everything erupts. At the center sat Jay-Z, Sean Carter, a man who had spent his life constructing an image of power and control. Billion-dollar businesses. Grammy Awards. A marriage to Beyoncé. He had it all. But today, none of it mattered. Not when he faced the possibility of losing the one thing money could never shield, his legacy. Across from him sat a man named Rymir. Not a celebrity, not a mogul, just an ordinary man with a heavy heart, a steady voice, and a simple request, the truth. For more than a decade, he had repeated the same words, "Jay-Z is my father." And for more than a decade, no one listened. Not the courts. Not the press. Not even Jay-Z himself. Most dismissed him as a clout chaser, someone chasing headlines or, worse, a paycheck. But that wasn't the case. Rymir never asked for money. He only wanted to know where he came from. That's it. One test. One answer. A sliver of truth in a life filled with silence. Now, after years of legal runarounds, media whispers, and a system built to shield the rich and powerful, he finally had his day. The test had been taken. The results were in. And Jay-Z, the man who had sidestepped the paternity question for years, was sitting just a few feet away from the truth. The energy in the courtroom was suffocating. Reporters held their breath. Cameras locked in. The tension was thick, electric, like the air right before a storm. Even Jay-Z's legal team, normally unshakable, looked uneasy. Then the judge leaned forward, eyes scanning the document, and read the results aloud. The DNA matched. That single line hit like a bomb. The room erupted in gasps. Jay-Z's jaw tightened. His eyes dropped to the floor. He muttered something under his breath, too low to catch. And then, for the first time in years, the billionaire lost control. His fists slammed against the table. His voice cracked as he shouted words no one could quite make out. His legal team rushed to surround him, whispering frantically, trying to reel him back in. But it was too late. The cameras had captured everything. The internet would do the rest. By sundown, the clip would be replayed 1,000 times. Meanwhile, Rymir sat frozen. No smile, no gloating, just the hollow, haunted stare of someone who had finally heard the truth. But it was too late for the truth to fix anything. This wasn't a victory. It was a confirmation of years already lost. A childhood without a father. A lifetime of being dismissed, mocked, ignored, and branded a liar. And now, after all of it, the truth surfaced in the sterile air of a courtroom, long after the damage had been done. Outside, the world exploded. Social media lit up with hashtags. The internet divided instantly. Some defended Jay-Z, insisting he was only protecting himself, his image, his empire. Others dragged him mercilessly, condemning him for denying his son, questioning his integrity, and wondering how a man so powerful could fear a simple truth. Memes appeared within minutes. Clips of Jay-Z's breakdown looped endlessly across timelines. But this wasn't just gossip. This wasn't entertainment. This was a man's life. Two men's lives. One had spent decades running from the truth. The other had spent decades chasing it. And now, for the first time, they sat face to face. No more lawyers. No more PR spin. Just father and son, and a truth too heavy to ignore. Jay-Z no longer looked like a mogul. He looked like a man cornered, cracked open by a truth that refused to stay buried. His hands trembled as he wiped his face, his composure shattered. This was the same man who had navigated billion-dollar deals without flinching, who had stood unshaken through scandals and storms. But this was different. This wasn't business. This wasn't image control. This was blood. This was fatherhood. And no amount of power could change that now. All the power Jay-Z held outside that courtroom meant nothing here. His lawyer They were desperate, pushing for a recess, anything to reset the room, anything to shield him from the storm already raging outside. But Jay didn't seem to hear them. His eyes stayed locked on the floor, caught in a silent war between denial and acceptance. He could feel every camera fixed on him. For years he had mastered the art of image control, but now, the image was shattered beyond repair. Across from him, Rymir hadn't moved. Still seated, still watching. His face was a storm of emotions, anger, relief, sadness, confusion, all colliding at once. He had always imagined this moment would bring closure, that hearing the truth declared in a courtroom would finally bring peace. But it didn't. Instead, it opened another door, one filled with painful questions. Why did it take so long? Why hadn't Jay-Z ever reached out? Why had the truth been treated like a threat, instead of something sacred? His thoughts drifted to his mother, Wanda, the woman who had told him the truth when he was just a boy. The woman who had repeated the same story year after year, even as the world dismissed her, mocked her, silenced her. She was gone now. Gone before she could see this day. She had died carrying the weight of being ignored, branded as just another woman chasing a name. But she was right. She had been right all along. And now, with her gone, the proof stood undeniable, staring back from the black and white certainty of a DNA test. The courtroom stayed frozen in silence. The courtroom remained tense. The judge, struggling to restore order, called for silence, but the whispers had already begun. Journalists typed furiously, shaping headlines in real time. The moment was too big to contain. Jay-Z's breakdown. The DNA results. The atmosphere crackling with tension. It was already a global story. Outside, the noise grew louder. Protesters, fans, reporters, all reacting in real time as the news spread. Some held signs in support of Rymir. Others defended Jay-Z, shouting claims of a setup, a cash grab, a PR stunt. The lines were being drawn quickly, fueled by the wildfire of the internet. Every frame of Jay's reaction had already been clipped into memes. Every second of the hearing was dissected by influencers, podcast hosts, legal analysts, and endless Twitter threads. But inside the courtroom, it wasn't about headlines. It wasn't about hashtags. It was deeply, painfully human. Behind the noise, behind the spectacle, there were just two men. One struggling to process a reality he had spent years denying. The other clutching a truth that, even now, refused to bring the peace he had long imagined. Finally, Jay raised his head. His eyes met Rymir's. For a second, everything else disappeared. The crowd. The cameras. The chaos. Gone. It was just them. Not a billionaire. Not a rap icon. Not an empire. Just a father staring at the son he had never acknowledged, and a son staring back at the man he had always hoped to know. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. When the judge dismissed the room, Jay-Z didn't move. He sat stone still, staring straight ahead, as if trying to freeze time. The empire, the myth of untouchable power, the carefully constructed image, all of it had taken a hit no press team could polish away. This wasn't a feud. This wasn't business. This was blood. This wasn't business. This was family. And it had unfolded in public with a verdict that left no room for spin. The DNA matched. He was the father. The courtroom emptied slowly. Reporters swarmed the hallways, phones raised, red record lights glowing. Outside, the crowd pressed against barricades, shouting questions no one would answer. But Jay stayed in his seat, alone with the weight of what the truth had done. He didn't look powerful anymore. He looked like a man forced to reckon with choices made decades ago. Rymir walked out quietly, slipping past the cameras without a word. No smile. No posing. He wasn't there for headlines, he just wanted out. For years, he had carried the burden of proving something that should never have required a courtroom. He'd been called a liar, a clout chaser, a scam artist, all for asking a man to acknowledge what one simple test had now confirmed. He wasn't celebrating. He was grieving. Grieving the father he never had. The moments never shared. The years lost to questions that only now had an answer, too late to matter. Back inside, Jay finally stood. He adjusted his jacket like he was trying to put his armor back on, but it didn't fit anymore. His lawyers flanked him, whispering about next steps, PR strategy, legal maneuvers, damage control. But their words barely registered. His mind wasn't on headlines. It was on the man who had just walked out the door. That boy wasn't a boy anymore. He had grown into a man without him, quiet, composed, dignified in ways that had nothing to do with money or fame. And that cut deeper than any headline ever could. Jay hadn't just missed the truth. He had missed the entire journey. Online, the fire spread fast. Clips of Jay's breakdown went viral within minutes. Jay-Z breaks down in court, the headline screamed. Memes flooded timelines. Conspiracies spun wild. Some mocked him, others defended him. But the story had already outgrown gossip. This wasn't just a celebrity scandal. This was a cultural reckoning. A reminder that no amount of fame could shield you from accountability, not when real lives were on the line. At home, Beyoncé and the Carters stayed silent. Too silent. The implications weren't just personal, they were massive. Marriage. Family. Brand deals. Legacy. Everything Jay had built was now under a microscope. Not because he had a son, but because he had buried the truth for so long, letting silence do the damage. The story wouldn't fade. Not this time. Too many people saw themselves in Rymir, the ignored, the dismissed, the fatherless. And too many saw themselves in Jay, the man who ran from truth until it cornered him in front of the world. For Rymir, the win wasn't really a win. The court gave him truth, but not time, not connection, not closure. Jay-Z was his father, but that didn't suddenly make him a son. It didn't erase birthdays missed or years gone. The verdict gave him what he wanted, but not what he needed. When Jay finally stepped out of the courthouse, cameras exploded in flashes. Reporters shouted his name. He didn't answer. He just walked through the chaos he once rose above, carrying the one thing he could never control again, the truth.